Rennie Good was a gifted soul, a writer and a poet and a mother, wow. She tried to hit an agent with her car, oh no! Pop, motherfucker, now she's gone! Yeah, yeah, yeah! Being a fucking liberal is a mental disease. Blue-haired and fuckables with the septum ring. You are not a hero, you're a fucking disease! You fuck around and find out it's what it is! Jeffrey Pretty was a Jewish homo. Started talking shit to protect a chomo. He was getting nicked when he pulled a gun. Bam, motherfucker, now you're gone! Yeah, yeah, yeah! Being a fucking liberal is a mental disease. Blue-haired and fuckables with a septum ring. You are not a hero, you're a fucking disease. Fuck around and find out what that is.
Hey guys, welcome to the program. Hey, do me a favor, will you please lift a finger, give me the finger, 1, 2, 3, doesn't matter, 4, like, share, do whatever. Share this program. We're going to do some biblical history. Yeah. Every now and then it's good to get away from politics, but unfortunately it's biblical history and therefore it's politics. But it's probably a history you have not heard or heard in context or heard where it came from, etc. I decided to do this. Let me tell you why. The Pope. I would think that people expect the Pope to know theology, to know his history. He basically quoted what he said was a passage just recently. Here's a quote. Jesus told us, is what he said, "Blessed are the peacemakers, but woe are those who manipulate religion in the very name of God for their own military, economic, or political gain, dragging that which is sacred into darkness and filth." Let me read that again. Jesus told us, "Blessed are the peacemakers, but woe to those who manipulate religion in the very name of God for their own military, economic, and political gain, dragging that which is sacred into darkness and filth." Only problem is it doesn't exist. Yeah. Wasn't Jesus who said it, and it doesn't exist. And so for me, that's kind of a crisis of, wow, even if our own spiritual or Christian or Jewish or whatever leaders actually don't know facts or biblical history. And of course, that one was aimed at President Trump. A lot came out and said that, it was bad. Look, this is a racket to divide the Catholics from President Trump for the midterms. It's a full attack to make sure that President Trump does not win the midterms. The political system needs to make sure Trump doesn't win the midterms. They need to take over the Senate and the House. And the reason they need to do that is so they can impeach Trump, prosecute Trump, and say, look, we were right all along, and put him in prison. So it never happens again. So nobody ever wants to come fix government. That's the lesson they want to teach the world. So we're going to be talking about some of this manipulation throughout history. Today's program is brought to you by the fine folks at Goldco. I'm asking you to go to jovanlovesgold.com. All I'm asking you to do is to request your gold and silver kit today, because now's the time to protect your money with gold and silver. That's what you need to do. You've got to get ahead of this curve. They're going to switch us to digital money. It is going to become an issue. Now, whether you do something about it, that is up to you. So this kind of has two pieces in it. We're going to talk about purgatory, and we're going to talk about indulgences, and a church history you probably never new. And that's why there's such a war going on in this country over church and faith. So get ready, share this program. We'll get started right after this.
Exposing the ancient secrets of royalty to grow giant fruit in small spaces. You won't believe how easy it is. Hey there, fellow gardeners. Have you heard about Jovan Hutton Pulitzer's new blockbuster book, Ancient Secret for Growing Giant Fruit in Small Spaces? It's taking Amazon by storm. This isn't just any gardening book. We're talking about ancient methods, once reserved for kings and queens, now revealed to the world. Yes, you heard right. Royal secrets for your backyard. Struggling with limited space? No problem. This book teaches you groundbreaking techniques to grow enormous, luscious fruits, even in the smallest of spaces. Imagine tricking fruit trees to bear fruit in months, not years, and growing produce up to 100% larger than what you find in stores. Sounds like magic, right? Pulitzer dives deep into history, uncovering how nobility ensured bountiful harvests. Now, these time-tested secrets are yours to transform your home garden into a paradise fit for royalty. Whether you're an urban dweller, a new homeowner, or an experienced gardener, this book has something for you. It's packed with practical tips and easy-to-follow methods. From enriching soil to perfect pruning techniques, you'll be growing giant fruits in no time.
Not fixing 2020 will damn our nation forever. The historic Maricopa County full forensic audit effort processed 20,895,610 digital and forensic images of varying formats, resulted in 208 million individual evidence-proof files. The system processed over 58 billion forensic measurements, resulting in over 2 trillion individual base computations. No hopium, no hype, just hardcore forensic evidence. Please make sure the Maricopa County Full Forensic Audit Archives survive. Donate now. So if you want what happened in the 2020 election fixed, then please donate to protect and secure this historic evidence.
Warning. The following program has been rated Gilligaff and is intended for open-minded audiences. If the truth offends you, or if you are allergic to focused intensity, intellectual athleticism, or the occasional F-bomb or even irreverent humor, please switch off now. If your delicate sensibilities need to be worried about or addressed, might we recommend the Underwater Basket Weaving channel to you? Otherwise, sit back, enjoy the wisdom, insight, and wicked sense of humor.
Cut the crap. How many times a day do you want to say that to politicians, the elite, the loony liberals, the fake news media, and the gender-confused emotional socialist snowflake crowd? Cut the crap is your secret weapon for fighting for our freedoms and our great republic. It all begins with a massive mental enema, freeing you from the toxic news and politically correct views, which constipate your consciousness with stinking thinking. Your host, Jovan Hutton Pulitzer. He's known for calling out politicians and telling them to cut the crap. You've seen him on virtually every television network and listened to him on Coast to Coast Radio. And now he's here to help you learn to fight for America. Culture, race, and American politics. They all have one thing in common. They all need to cut the crap. Now, here's your host, Jovan Hutton Pulitzer.
Okay, folks, here we go. We're going to do some church history study. We're going to study this thing called Purgatory and Indulgences, and it's a church history not talked about. First, let me set a precedent. I could care less if you're a Catholic or a Baptist or a Lutheran or Episcopalian or a Jew or whatever the case may be. That is not what this program is about. This program is about how a lot of things throughout history have become intertwined and where political things have become their own face, or face things have become things that are political. So you take from this program what you want to take from this program. Got it? Now, secondly, anytime I do any kind of these historical things, I want you to understand faith. Your belief, your faith right, is what you have directly with God. Period. That's your direct connection. That is your faith. Get it straight. Religion is the man-made component of a professional organization around faith. See, where two or more are gathered in his name to discuss and to learn, that's church. That's all that church meant. Ecclesia, that's all it meant. And so religion comes from the organizing around that gathering, but structured, ruled, controlled, and managed. Okay? So I want to set these clear lines. I don't care what your faith is. And your faith's not important to this particular discussion. Got it? And then religion's man-made. It's the organization. It is the politics behind it. And by the way, if you knew your history, you understood that politics and religion were the same thing. Government and religion were the same thing together. So what we're going to do is we're just going to take a journey back in time to understand what is purgatory and what is indulgences. Now, why am I doing this? Recently, the Pope, they're doing a massive Catholic-based campaign to push back on President Trump. Catholic charities get a tremendous amount of money, bringing in illegals, etc. So there's kind of this ongoing war between the Catholic Church, the organization, and President Trump's administration. And so they've been putting bishops and cardinals and stuff out on the road, kind of talking about President Trump. And I don't think churches should be political, and it shouldn't, but that's just the society we live in. Now, make no at all. Don't even think this is not connected. It's 100% connected, and it's connected to the midterms. We are in the midst of a violent war right now to do everything they can to turn the world and the people away from President Trump, but President Trump still winning, right? Gas price is going to start tumbling really quick, etc. So we're going to look at it. And what made me decide to look at this is, in fact, the Pope. And the Pope actually literally just said, here's the quote exactly. Jesus told us, "Blessed are the peacemakers, but woe to those who manipulate religion and the very name of God for their own military, economic, or political gain, dragging that which is sacred into darkness and filth." And it's not a quote. It's not in the Bible. It doesn't exist. It's not attributed to Jesus or anything like that. Just not at all. It does not exist. So my first thing was, hold on, real simple. I got to do something real quick. See, because I have a rule in my program, okay? And my program is, do not share your links for your stuff in my program. So here's what I did. I just deleted it. But when we got a mission, when you come back on my platform trying to get them to your platform, you're gone forever. You got it? Strike one. Period. Now, why don't I allow links? Because I don't have time to vet them. And you're watching my program, and anything that appears in my program better be congruent and better be fact. So don't post shit. Here's two. We got another one. Okay. That's two. I'm just going to say bye-bye forever. See ya. When they start spamming like that, gone. Okay. It's a war for eyeballs. And the system will rape as many eyeballs as they can get. Right? Don't do that. Wrong program. Wrong program. Bye-bye. Okay. In my particular life, I grew up in a family where my sisters and I are completely different than the rest of our family, in the fact that we're my one brother and my two sisters and I are the only ones in the family that are first generation Americans, and it's because my mother is German. Now, my one brother was because my father was stationed in Germany, was previously married. I come from a different mother later on, German, that my father married. It made me first generation. But what we weren't allowed to talk about at all was our Jewish roots. You had to hide it. Now, naturally, just inherently in my DNA, and I gravitated towards it. And when I became an adult, I basically started going to synagogue. But one of the things I did is I went everywhere. I've done Baptist, I've done Pentecostal, you freaking name it, right? To study, to learn, to understand. I've always been this way. And I can remember a time when I'm testing out the Methodist church, which I kind of liked. It's kind of a cross between that fire and brimstone and a little organizational pomp and circumstance. And then my damn pastor, whatever you want to call him, gets convicted for trying to murder his wife, right? And I have, believe it or not, I have Jehovah's Witnesses in my family. I haven't tried that. The closest I've gotten is listening to Michael Jackson's music, but that's a different story. And so I'm all about understanding, and I believe you should attempt to understand, right? I believe you should attempt to understand, because if you don't try, you're kind of failing, and then you only believe what everybody kind of pumps into you. And so when this quote by the Pope came out, I found it very disturbing that we'll call it the highest person in the land. Remember, the Vicar post and the inscription on the Pope's crown literally translate to "in place of God on earth." Most people don't know that. The crown that the Pope wears states that he is in place of God on earth. Okay? And you would think somebody that holds the post of being able to forgive sins, remember, he can go and sins go away. For me, only God can do that. But so I'm going, man, you're supposed to be the greatest of the greatest. You better know your stuff. And then to see this fake Bible passage pushed out on people, I'm going, wait a minute. What are we seeing? Are we seeing faith? Are we seeing religion? Are we seeing politics? Are we seeing manipulation? And like I said, religion has in the past become politics. Politics has become religion. And so that's where I want to take us today, because I want to study. Let's go back to where some of the places in time where mankind superseded God. Yeah. Where mankind has decided they have authority over God. I'll give you a prime example. It goes on every day. The Netherlands just passed a bill that allows them to take, say, a gay male couple, take the DNA of two men, blend it together, fertilize it with an egg for artificial insemination for a woman to carry that baby, to actually make it actually be from those two guys' DNA. Don't know how it's going to work, but supposedly it does. They also passed a law that you can make a child with yourself. Yes, take your DNA, basically exclusive. Don't know how they do it. Fertilize the egg, and it's you, and you're having a child that was made by you, but specifically didn't need a woman. They say they can do it. I have no idea how they can do it, but the Netherlands just passed this. Now, when it comes to cutting penises off little boys or boobies off little girls and saying, now you're a boy, now you're a girl, and all this other, this is like playing like you're God. And I think that stuff has got completely out of control. And so part of this is to look back in time. Where in time did organized religion supersede the boundaries of just natural and godly law? Right? And has it been done to the detriment of mankind? And that's where we are on this particular one with purgatory and indulgences. Because I think whether science says they can do it, people believe it because they're God or science gods, or whether the church says they can do it, some people, their gods are church gods, and then you got the greenie meanies or the environment gods. You can have a lot of different gods, right? Just like the trans have the trans god. And so first I want you to understand some of the meanings. The purgatory is kind of where it's an in-between hell. You die, you either go to heaven or hell. There was this thing that got created in between called purgatory. You've gone here first. It's kind of like a holding pen. You're suffering. It's in a holding pen, but you're not quite in hell yet. And that can be indefinite. Now, an indulgence, which is the other part of this, an indulgence came about, and that's part of the history I'm going to tell you, and again, this purgatory is Catholic Church, indulgence is Catholic Church. And they basically call this temporal punishment, that, hey, you have sin that's lingering around and it's not cleared enough, or you're going to commit a sin. So if you'll do a certain number of prayers or charitable acts, we're going to focus on charitable acts, we will allow you to buy an indulgence. It basically means if I wanted to go out and rape, murder, and pillage, that I can go and say, I want forgiveness. I'm going to rape, murder, and pillage. And my priest says, okay, it's going to cost you this much, and you are pre-forgiven. This is a real thing, which ironically is like Islam. Rape's not a rape if it's an infidel. Rape's not a rape if it's in the name of Allah. A lot of coincidences here. So let's kind of study this and go back to some of the history, which I think is kind of interesting. You should understand. So back in history, and let's go back to Masada. If you've ever been, Israel or whatever, right? It's kind of like a carbon credit. You're exactly right. Oh, I'm going to buy a carbon credit and forgive me for my sin to the planet. Bullshit. It's all for money. Exactly. Prime example. You buy a carbon credit, you are absolved of your sin. Now, all throughout time, there have been tones of praying for the dead, praying for your loved ones that have passed. This goes back in Jewish tradition. It goes back in the Hellenistic tradition, way back when. But it's always been, my loved one has died. I pray that they will be welcomed in the open arms of heaven. So it's been around since BC. It's probably one of the most well-known discussion of this is 200 BC, and it's Maccabees, right? Basically kind of pre-praying for the soldiers that are about to enter this horrendous battle. So this thought has kind of been around, and it's kind of been that mankind feels better that their loved one is, with your help, with your prayers and petitions, not getting their asses burnt off in hell. Okay, you got it? That's kind of where it comes from. And it's basically the simple premise, historically, is that death is not the end of mercy. People tend to think of mercy, they're going to cut somebody's self. No, well, please give me mercy. It's just the extension of death, right? Death is not the end of mercy, that you can still get mercy after death in the form of a cleansing and in the form of quite possibly before you face the divine, as if you're lining up in a long line at the ticket theater and you got to wait for your St. Peter, ironically, to let you into the gates of heaven. That symbology comes from the Roman Catholic Church. Now, this is the ancient spark that in Christendom, now, please understand Christendom, folks, when I say that. It doesn't matter if you're Anglican, Lutheran, Protestant, Church of Christ, Pentecostal, Baptist, first, second, third, fourth, the only, the best, the whatever, the united. Your Christian faith comes 100% from the Holy Roman Empire and the Romans. Period. I don't care what your Christian faith is. We're talking the start. And you need to understand that. So as I'm sharing this, we're only talking about the historical context of where all of this comes. So the historical context of all Christian faith begins with the Roman Catholics. Got it? Not saying you're Catholic, but that's it. Okay. Now, in early Christendom, as the church is becoming a thing, okay, this concept gets introduced, and it really took off during the Middle Ages, but the concept gets introduced that, well, maybe you don't go right to fire and brimstone and hell, and my departed family member or loved one is somewhere in between, and they're kind of in suspended animation or limbo, waiting for their time. And it was basically a mysterious middle ground, which became later known as purgatory. This is where purgatory comes to. And purgatory is a place where imperfect souls could be, they were there and they're headed down, not necessarily up. They could be purified in a sense to make sure they got into heaven. Okay? So this concept, it's kind of a convoluted lines between, in the Hellenistic area or Judaism, it was prayers for your loved ones. And then the Roman Catholic Church turned it into an economy system. In the Orthodox Jews, they have a thing called mourner's Kaddish, and it basically means you mourn, you pray for 11 months after one's death, and you're seeking for them to be embraced by heaven. That's prayers and petitions. But we're not talking about prayers and petitions as much as we're talking about man can intercede, the living that are left behind through the church can intercede on your behalf and make sure this can be done. It can be helped for you. Okay? We're not going back to the Emerald Tablets. I've gone back to 200 BC. This is where we're going to start. This is kind of the general thing of it. It's always been you pray for your loved ones, but something happened from the prayers from the loved ones, prayers and petitions, where prayers and petitions became money changes it. Okay? Now, in the early church fathers, they were having a very hard time explaining what was God's grace and what happens to you. Now, I need to put a measurement stick in here for it, okay? Please understand. the goal was to live a life so righteous, pure, pious, and devout that you would earn your way to saintism. Do you understand what I'm saying? The long time ago goal was even you can be a saint. And when you're a saint, you get remembered. Your name gets remembered throughout history. You'll be remembered forever. So the goal for a righteous life was to be so pure, so clean, so devout, so focused, or whatever the case may be, that you will later be recognized as a saint. And that's where this issue in the church came up, because so few people are going to literally become saints. The church was forced to answer, if the goal is to become a saint, and people can see historically, wow, so few people become saints. Look how many people have died. We haven't had a new saint in 50 years or 100 years. You see what I'm saying? They're saying, well, what happens to those people? They lived such a great life. You get the conundrum? A super high bar was set. But the church decides who to bestow sainthood on. So mankind could see, wait a minute, my mama was the best there ever was. She never cussed. She did that. She was a saint. That's why you hear the saying in Italian, my mama, she's a saint. That's where this comes from, right? And so many people had a problem with, wait a minute, all these good people, all these good, all these good people, and they gave their life to the church, or they gave their life to our neighborhood or whatever. They died, and you say they're not a saint. So here came the problem. The problem was they were the epitome of good. They were a life that everybody modeled after it. But you didn't make them a saint. So you see the disconnect between the people and the church really quick. They kind of didn't think this thing out, right? So the church actually had to create a way to explain this disconnect. Because now they have a disconnect. Because you could have thousands of people in a town know this one Mama Mia, and she was the best, and the church doesn't make her a saint, and the people are going, hold on a minute here. If she couldn't even qualify as a saint, I won't qualify as a saint. So you see, you have this confidence breakdown. Basically, the church lost control. I want you to understand, becoming a saint was like being the rock star, movie star, politician, president, most published author, whatever of the time. It was the highest you could attain because you'd be remembered forever. People would pray to you. People would worship you. You got to understand, it was the highest bar set. It backfired. So the church now has a process because the people said, fuck it, why even try? You can see the conundrum. It's pretty obvious when you analytically study it. And so it forced the church to wrestle with what happens to the souls who died in God's grace, meaning they did what was expected and right, but they didn't become a saint. Because they had all these witnesses, these are good people, and you're saying a saint is, and it became an exclusive club because they couldn't grant everybody sainthood because you'd be praying to, the 7 million or 2 million or whatever the billion is number before us that died before all of us came here. Get it? You couldn't remember the names of the saints, much less the numbers of the saints. And so they had to figure out a system. How can we deal with this? They had to make a business marketing decision. The marketing decision was got a problem. And this one is kind of hard to hide. And so Origen, Origen of Alexandria, basically came up with the concept. People say in the 3rd century that it's a brilliant concept. He basically literally created a concept called spiritual fire. Now, there's spiritual fire is not the punishing flames of hell, right? Not the punishing flames of hell. And so they had to say, well, where do these people go? Because they didn't make sainthood. That was the epitome. They're not standing at the right hand of God or Jesus or whatever the case may be. So where'd they go? And they were so good. Are you telling me they're even burning in hell? Get it? So they came up with this concept of called spiritual fire. They're in fire. Remember, fire was the weapon of the time. Fire was what destroyed city, town, people's crops. Fire was the weapon of mass destruction. And so they basically said, well, no, this is a spiritual fire. And they are now languishing in a spiritual fire on their way to hellfire. Now, they drew this from Old Testament imagery and then St. Paul's words about being tested by fire. And those little bitty words, they came up with a whole new concept. St. Paul said, the soul of the elect passes into a state of punishment, a penal fire conceived as a place of purification. That's his writing. In his writing works that St. Paul said, the soul of the elect passes into a state of punishment, a penal fire conceived as a place of purification. So now they basically said, this fire is not to kill you. This fire is to cleanse you. And so they're all waiting to be cleansed. They were good people, not good enough to be a saint, but they're waiting to be cleansed. Tertullian, who was fiery, right? North African writer, think Carthage. If you were thinking Spain, Straits of Gibraltar, North Africa, that was all the Punic or Carthage region there. He basically came up with this concept. Yeah, you got spiritual fire, but it's technically a prison. And they are going to be held in prison, right? And by the way, in chat, let's focus on the story. Let's just kind of stay right here. I want you to get the story. I don't want you to supplant it with other sayings or other whatever, because you don't know where I'm headed. Let's just kind of focus on the story. And so what he said was, and he painted it, he was the big writer of the time, so think the media, that this is a prison for non-martyrs where good experience stages of bliss. In order to get to their bliss versus 72 virgins, they would get reward. But they were still trying to figure out, well, how do they get their rewards? If they're dead, if they weren't good enough for a saint, but we know if they just languish there forever, they haven't gone to heaven, they haven't gone to hell, but they're in their spiritual fire. How can we get them out of there? Then that became the concept. So the church had to explain, where do all these good people go? And even in that, mankind somebody goes, okay, they go here in spiritual fire, but they're still in fire because people understood fire to be fire, wet. And then prison? Well, how the fuck do you get them out of prison? We want them to go to heaven. So they had another problem. And so what happened, while all these people are waiting in a suspended spiritual fire to get to the bliss, here comes the 4th and 5th centuries. And so this is where St. Augustine of Hippo gave the concept of deeper roots. He's the one that gave it really deeper roots. In Augustine's written works called Confessions, he prays for his mother, Monica, after her death. And he's begging God to remember her at the altar. That means to embrace her. And so in his writings, he's talking about his mom. He distinguished between eternal punishment for the damned and temporary purifying fires for the believers. Think of it as you've seen maybe the CDC or a chemical crew come in. There's a plague. They've got their white suits on like E.T. People are put in a little room and the sprays clean to people. Take that imagination, the temporary purifying fire, but they're still believers. And the concept came up of temporal punishment. They're owed temporal punishment for the forgiveness of their sins. And this is where the whole concept of everyone, when you die, it took hold, you're going to pass through purgatorial fire, and that fire is going to be directly, decontamination, thank you. That proportion of what you do or do not suffer, or the intensity, is going to be based on the works two things, the works you did in life combined with what your family's willing to do with you. Again, let's go back into a time where people are trying to understand this. It backfired on the church, creating saints. People couldn't qualify. People couldn't understand. You can't say they're going to hell, so they had to make up a place to go. Well, that's a spiritual fire. They got them in this spiritual fire that held for a while. It's still punishment, but it's not punishment. And then they said, wait a minute, it's still fucking punishment, and these people were great. And so that's where they decided the scales. You kind of think of it like Dante's Inferno, right? That book, it's where a lot of it comes from. But the church instituted a really interesting thing. See, all these people kept on complaining, my mama, she was a saint. And they introduced the concept, well, part of the reason she's suffering is because of you. And the people go, what? My loved ones are suffering because of me. And they introduced the concept. It's not only about what that person did in life, it's what you're doing in life. And you're not doing enough to help your mom, guilt, you're right, bingo, to help your mom be quickly delivered and purified through the flames. So they put it back on the people. 100% a manufactured concept. By the way, the story only gets better and better and better. So stay with me. It's a very interesting story. So by the late 6th century, Pope Gregory, right? Gregory the Great. Why don't they have Gregory the Average or Gregory the Suck? Anyway, it's Gregory the Great. So Gregory the Great, okay? He's the rock star that took all of this mainstream. He published his work called Dialogues. And in it, he shared a very vivid story that he had a dream, he had a vision. Kind of like Candace. I know this is true, and Erica did it because it came to me in a dream. Anyway, he had a vision that there were souls appearing in fiery torments or gloomy places. And they were crying out. Now, the image he paints, get ready, it's a slight turn of hand. If you're truly caught in hell and you want to get to heaven, you're going, God, let me in. God, help me. God, save me. Think about it. With somebody in a crisis, somebody's going to kill them. God, help me. God, help me. They did one simple turn. And he said those people aren't crying out to God. They're crying out to you, humans, Nick, Paul, John, Mary, Elizabeth, shiny buff shaft, cheeky mom, you've got to pray for me. You got to get everybody to pray for me so I can get out of this suffering. Do you get the little twist that happened there? They took it away from God. Now, all of the suffering people caught in this limbo, they said they're not crying out to God, they're crying out to you, and you're failing them. So people go, oh my God. And this is what happened. Okay? So this entire concept of their suffering, yes, they were great, but it's your fault, through Gregory the Great, became institutionalized. And they told people, you're not hearing them cry out from purgatory, but we can hear all of these millions of people crying out for you. You're not blessed. You're not special. You can't hear them, but we can. And they're saying, you got to pray. You've got to petition for them. You got to do things to get them out. You got to buy them out of there. What happened is this was never theology, and still to this day is not theology. It's in theological teachings, but if you're thinking of the root of it, is it theology that did it, right? No, it was man-made, created. And so then they began to convince people you need to pray for your loved ones. And somewhere along the way, people started saying, well, can you get my mom out faster? Anything you do, we've prayed a lot. Got a lot of people praying for her. Can you get her out faster? And it became a pastoral tool. And of course, the pastor would just call it that. Priest would say, I don't know, I see what to do. Maybe you should do, maybe if you were a little more helpful for the church. So people automatically started throwing a little more money in the hat. Who doesn't want to get their mama out of hell or purgatory? She was a good one. So throw in a couple of binges. I'll see what I do. You could write. It's the natural course of mankind. Well, the bishopdom, the cardinaldom, the priestdom, whatever, started kind of reporting back that, wow, people are willing to do more for us to help their families get out of purgatory. What do we do? So the first thing they did, and they established this in the 10th century, the first thing they did is says, well, let's see if we can get, instead of it just kind of being over time, why don't we have a Jerry Lewis telethon? Now, I say that to you because they didn't know who Jerry Lewis was. But you remember the muscular dystrophy, Labor Day telethon or whatever, right? The church came up with, okay, let's make a big push. Folks, don't get upset. I'm only giving you history. This is the history of religion and mankind, not faith, not God, religion and mankind. Okay? What they did was had one day where you could do a drive and they could really count on people to get their loved ones out of hell. Right? And so they created the day for mankind to fulfill what they're not doing for their families. People just amaze me. Just amaze me. And so they created a day for mankind, right? And what they created at the church level, hey, I'm just trying to recoup myself for a moment. Maybe I misunderstood something, but I'm just trying to recoup something where sometimes people just be idiots and impugn. But they created this day. And that day became All Souls Day, established in the 10th century. Now, All Souls Day basically became, okay, everybody knows you can help your family get out of the spiritual fall of purgatory, but what about all the poor people? And there were good poor people, but they were just the poor. So they created All Saints Day. Remember, the goal was to be a saint. You got to understand the context. The goal was to be a saint, where people could get together as humankind, and for the poor souls, popular people would think about it because you're not going to get in on money of poor people. So people that had a little more could enact, because there's two things you could do. Let me put it back on the screen. You can either pray, look at the bottom, or you can do a charitable act. You could do a chair or a charitable act. So they paved the way for people to get a little more credit for their family by doing a charitable act. And what was the charitable act? Well, I'll pay for their family on All Saints Day. And they all light candles, which they bought from the church, because you can only light a candle from the church. And they offered prayers and alms and Eucharistic offerings, which all came from the church, that could ease the journey for their relatives in hell. It basically became Patholitic Lusa. To understand, it was like a big concert, but they weren't singing. That's in the 10th century. That became All Saints Day. That's the origin of it, right? But for centuries, this had been around. Purgatory was this concept. It was spiritual fire. It was more a thing that you would end up in than a solid place. So what happens is it just keeps on becoming more solid, more ingrained, more solid over time. And then Christians in the East were influenced by Gregory of Nyssa, 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 that this is a physical place. It doesn't really have graphic torments like the less, but it tied into trying to make it a little more gentler, kinder, built on the feudal system. And what was the feudal system? You have feudal lords and you have serfs, and you can work the land, but your debt is to the Lord of the land. And so they kind of tied this in, right? And then during the 12th century, this kind of happened in the schools in Paris is where it started. Theologians like Peter Lombard, right, the Cistercian monk, he kind of came out, and he was the first one to map the afterlife. So he made a map of the afterlife. And so what he called this was the birth of purgatory. So it started around in 1160. This is where it becomes official through 1180. It became an actual physical place, not a description of physical limbo, not a description of spiritual purifier. It became an absolute, like, four-walled doors place. It was no longer just a condition. It was absolutely fucking true. Didn't have this etheric nature to it. It was absolutely true. And that's where the place of cleansing first appeared. Since it made it in a distinct realm, and artists would start drawing it, right? People could understand it more. And so that's where you have what was the third kingdom. The third kingdom. You had heaven, you had hell, and now in art and in literature and everything else, you had the third kingdom, which was mountains and valleys and all the purifying flames. And what did it mean? Work your ass off at the time trying to walk up those steep mountains, walk through those valleys, because they were walking everywhere. And that's how it became a physical place. And everything kind of shifted. And this is what became in the feudal society's time, that what you focus on is penance and contracts and hierarchy. So you got to understand what happened. The institution set. They can see people, the church can drive it. And as they're trying to explain why everybody doesn't make to a saint, an opportunity got created. Well, we'll just have hierarchy, and you're going to have a contract, and you're going to pay penance. All where this comes from, paying penance, paying penance. Think of it as what? Tax, paying penance. Everything happened. And at the same time that this happened and mankind could understand it, 12th century, an interesting thing started happening. Of course, everybody wanted to be saintly. Remember, to be a saint is to be a rock star. There was God, Pope, saints, right? Kings were down here. Church was above kings. So everybody wanted to be considered godly. Think of it as the social signaling at the time. Social signaling. Think of that. Social signaling. So what happened is, as word spread of this, it became a thing. Kind of like an internet challenge, an Instagram challenge, right? And what happened? Knights, kings, monks, even common sinners started talking about, I've had this vision. Everybody started having visions. And in their visions, they would go, oh my God, I was being tormented. I was being tormented. I was being tormented. But somebody interceded for me and I escaped. That became the coup de grace. The banner is, I've seen the light. No, that became, right? Just like you have some pastors today, I was dead clinically for 30 minutes. They pronounced me dead. We're taking me to the morgue and I popped back up. There are priests out there today, pastors and churches that do that. Anyway, so all of a sudden, all classes of people begin to have visions. And in visions, they could see themselves in this burning purgatory hell place, all these levels, suffering the horrible suffering, and somebody interceded on their behalf. And they got out, right? And so what happened is, in the medieval mind, this now brought God's justice is perfect, because now everybody can have justice. Everybody can have justice. See, the first disconnect was you need to be a saint. So many people could never get there, of course. And so it became, well, I'm never going to get there. Fuck you. I'm not even going to try. You understand what I'm saying? And so as the church is going through this multi-100-year morph, they finally got to the point that God's justice is perfect, but the only thing greater than God is his mercy. And it became about mercy. And it created this concept that a soul's never lost, nor is a soul instantly glorified. You got to understand this concept. It's not, fuck it, they're burned, they're gone. Got to forget that, move on. Wasn't that. And it wasn't, oh, they're a saint. They introduced, get ready for this, you'll understand when I say it, a time hack. And it basically said, God's justice is perfect, but the only thing greater is his mercy. And you're not instantly judged or lost, and you're not instantly perfect. It takes time. And all of a sudden, people understood, oh shit, you mean I should have been paying for this for the last 30 years of my life and my kids and stuff because my mom still should be there? She could still be there. It wasn't that one time of putting a coin in the basket. No, it takes time. You said you'd say an extra prayer for me. I threw a few little ducats. I even gave you my favorite chicken. And that didn't do it? No, it takes time, my son. And so what happened by the 13th century, one of these councils, just like Council of Nicaea, the Second Council of Lyon in 1274, the bishops, remember the Bible was decided by the bishops, 400 and some odd men or 600 men that decide this is it. The same bishops basically came up with the following. And this is how it moved into, yes, I got artistic 12 for $20 to move up the list. Ken Wampanoag, can I get $50 to move you up the list? Move you up the list. Yeah, that kind of thing. We'll shorten your time frame. In France, what is now France, at the Second Council of Lyons, okay? In 1274, the bishops declared, if those who are truly repentant die, listen to the words, ready? If those who are repentant, meaning they want to repent, they don't want to have sins, if those that are repentant that die, they added two words there. Listen, if those who are truly repentant die in charity, meaning you've been giving the whole time. You couldn't be repentant and die. You couldn't be observant and die. You had to be repentant in charity, meaning given to the church continually. If they died before they had done sufficient enough penance, this is where they sold the entire feudal system, penance. If those who are truly repentant die in charity before they have done sufficient enough penance, their souls are cleansed after death in purgatorial punishments. This is what it was. This is where it became the fact law of the land. Right? Now they made it official. You can do all this great shit, but you died before you had a chance to do enough great shit. You gave, you contributed, and you were perfect, and you died, oops, but you still didn't give enough, and so you're going to purgatory. And this is where they came up with the official thing of this is how it works. This was Council of Florence in 1439, about 170 years later, right? Lily, my program's about this. I've talked about that topic for a lot. Love you, dear, right? And I know you join us from overseas. I'll get to that at the end. Anyway, this is about history. And so what happens, the Council of Florence officially codified in 1439 what was called East-West Unity, the whole process, right? The whole process of what's called cleanse after death by purgatorial penalties, okay? It basically said purgatory is not a second chance for salvation because you were already saved. Key distinction. Purgatory is not because they could say, well, but I'm saved. I've done this. I've done whatever, right? Right? They said, look, purgatory is not washing away your salvation. It's not a second chance at salvation. You have been saved by the church. You are saved. But in life, you carry personally eternal guilt through Christ's sacrifice and sacraments And therefore, because you are forced to carry that guilt, not that Jesus gave his life for you, but you now have to carry the guilt of what was done to him, you technically have sinned and you are owed temporal consequence. And the way they sold this concept is just like gold is purified by fire, 1 Corinthians 5:31. Souls are made spotless for heaven, right? And the more treasury of merits you contributed, prayers, good works, mass, attending mass, money, etc., you got through. Then, in the Council of Trent in 1563, the church is having a big challenge of this, right? Some in the congregation, if you want to call it that, right? There was pushbacks. Everybody understood that there's purgatory and the souls are detained there are helped by the suffrages of the faithful, especially by the acceptable sacrifice of the altar, not sacrifice of Jesus, your sacrifice that you're giving to the altar, what you're doing. And so all the church at this time in 1563 was ordered to teach this. You can't make exaggerations, right? Etc. And it basically became the establishing place. Now you can see how all of this happened. Now let's talk about the corruption. You've got the history of how it occurred, how many years it occurred over, etc. Right? We get to the Reformation. The Reformation is basically saying, and this is where the Reformation comes from, this is horseshit. Anybody who's logical can see this is horseshit. Now you understand why the Reformation came about. So let me share for you the accelerant that fostered the Reformation. Most people have no idea. Why was there a Reformation? What was the going on? Well, what happened is it basically, the church started selling the keys to the kingdom. This purgatory thing had become their single largest profit center. It was the cash cow. So let me paint a story for you. Imagine being in the 15th century. You're in what would be an ancient German town, kind of a hooded figure, right? You kind of he climbs onto a wooden platform, right? And when he gets up on his platform, he removes his hood, and he opens this massive iron chest. And all of a sudden, these banners drop down. They flutter in the wind, and they all have the papal seal. It said, "It's the machines." No, I'm kidding. All of a sudden, you see this. So all the peasants, all the merchants, all the widows, they're there with their coins. And here comes this traveling preacher. Here is almost a verbatim of what they would say. So he's on a grandstand in the center of town. And because it's the Pope, like you've seen any medieval one, you see the pomp and circumstance, and you see the flags, and it's got the papal seal and stuff. This person pulls up, and they would begin to give a sermon like this. Did you hear the screams of your dead father? Did you hear the screams of your dead mother? They're writhing in the flames of purgatory. It eventually get to one coin, just one coin, and their souls will fly free. These chests, people would rush the concert stage, giving their money to set their family free. And so this became a traveling roadshow, but I want you to understand this was not a performance. This is official, ordained church business. This is what's called the doctrine of purgatory. They believed it gave hope to the faithful. It basically lessened the worries of the day because you're not worried about your mother or your child that just died. They're burning in purgatory because they already said nobody escapes purgatory. Everybody's in, right? And so they're held in this temporary realm of cleansing fire. And they died in God's grace, but they're still stained by sin. And we kind of got we can wash. It's amazing how silver or gold. Well, gold washes away that sin faster. And it actually became one of the most audacious and backfiring financial schemes to ever hit the Middle Ages. And this is where you get to indulgences. They went one more step further. You've got to pay for your family's sin. Now, I want you to understand something here. I'm going to give you a historical context. Okay? Here you go. Way back in time, in Jesus' times, people talked about basically, I'm at a loss for a word. When you come back as another person, secondary lives, give me the word. I'm having a brain fart on the word. Reincarnation. Okay? Way back then, they had reincarnation. That you're going to come back. You're not done with this life. You're going to come back and you're going to do it again until you get it right. That was reincarnation. That's what everybody understood. Well, when Rome started instituting taxes, people would say, because this was doctrine, reincarnation. They're going to go through this several times. When the Romans came to charge taxes and people couldn't pay, here's what they would say. Ready? Catch me in the next life. And it was valid. Just catch me in the next life. And of course, it pissed off the Romans and it eventually pissed off the church. Right? Because it was kind of a fuck you. But you follow what I'm saying? And that's when the church started dickering with doctrine. And that is why you can see so many ancient books that talk about reincarnation, right? Or you might go through this multiple times, and that's why they eradicated reincarnation, and they took it out. Catch me in the next life. And so what happened, they found a way to make humans pay for the people that had already left. You're not only paying in your life, you're paying for all of those that have done. And so what happened is the church found a way to print money. So it wasn't only about get me out of purgatory. You could pre-buy your way out. You could go to the priest or the church and you can say, look, I'm going to go over to my neighbor's. I'm going to bonk his wife. I'm going to make his kids my slaves. And I'm going to cut the guy's head off. And I'm going to take his land. And I just want to let you know in advance, well, give me money and I will forgive you of sins, my son. And it's going to take an extra super bonus if you act now, but wait, there's more. And if you'll do this, and okay, so I'll forgive you for raping the wife. I'll forgive you for killing the husband. Forgive you for taking land. No. Oh, we got to do purgatory. And you could pay. And that was called an indulgence. You could buy an indulgence. Folks, what we're talking about is purgatory indulgences, the church history that's not talked about. So you could buy it. One, to make sure it's not sinful, because this man standing there on the stage taking your money, well, he can forgive you of your sins. Why? Because I wear the robe and I have the seal. And if you act now, you get a free soft pillow. The church positions it. We're not giving you forgiveness. We're just selling you time shortening. Very interesting twist. We're not actually forgiving you. We're just making sure when you get to purgatory, you're going to get out quicker. Now, here's interesting. If you paid in advance, you had one price. But if somebody in your family died, you had to pay more for them because fuck, they're already dead. So the price tag kept rising and rising and rising. All these indulgences were used during the Crusades and all kinds of stuff. Right? And they started granting indulgences. This is where they learned the indulgence part of it. During the Crusades, you can do anything. So ambitions ballooned, wants balloons. I'm going to take a bigger risk for the church, and it became a big deal. So the church created a position, and most people never know about this position in the church. They were the official pardoners, not partoners, pardoners, like presidential pardon. And so they sent around, and of course, Europe is getting bigger and richer and better and everything else. They sent around teams of pardoners, traveling pardoners, and it became a massive system. A massive system. And the system still exists today, by the way. And so these guys weren't monks. These were guys that got a piece of paper from the local bishop or the pope that says, hey, I'll go out and do this. I'd be good at it. And they cut a deal with the church that you get 50%, I get 50%. But then when they realized they got a touring concert roadshow that's bigger than shit and everybody's coming because it's the guy that can make sure you're not in purgatory or in hell and forgive sins, will set your family free, then they realized, shit, I got people coming from all over. What can I do? This is actually written about in the Canterbury Tales. They started creating the whole system. This is where this comes from, of fake relics. Here's a pig's knuckle, really, but no, this is St. Peter's elbow socket. And you could buy it if you want. And that's where that business came out. So all of a sudden we get out of hell free purgatory cards for you and your family. Do it right. You're going to pay more for the ones already dead. Hey, you might as well do your now because you don't want your family to pay more, as if anybody remembered it. Right? And what they would do is somebody would come and I'm going to rape my neighbor's 3-year-old because I'm going to create something in the future called LGBTQ, but you know, right? Okay. 10 shillings. And here's your piece of paper that proves I did this. And so people could buy repentance, indulgences for future sins they were going to commit. Adultery, theft, murder, etc. Poor people, just like the fucking lottery, would give their entire savings because they were scared to death because they didn't have money. You got to understand the conundrum it cut. People that had money were assured to go to heaven. White privilege. Bullshit. You get it? But the poor go, I can't finish it. And what we're talking about is Christendom. And I said at the very beginning of the program, it comes through multiple traditions, Judaism, etc., esoteric Judaism. I'm speaking of the words indulgences and indulgences, right? And purgatory. It's a specific lesson I'm bringing all the way through history, not confusing anything else. But if you go back to the beginning, I'll go back to 200 BC. Anyway, then the people in class warfare go, well, they're going to get to heaven. I'm not going to get to heaven. So it freaked out poor people. And so poor people would give everything, right? I just said at the beginning of my program, because it's my program, there are parallels. But thank you. So what it ended up actually doing is making the poorer poorer. The poor became poorer over it because they wanted to make sure I'm not going to have any fucking thing in life, and I suffer every goddamn day, and I just can't do enough because I can't buy my family out. I can't buy this out. I can't do this out. I can't buy for my future sense. And so they would basically give over everything. And then by the time of the Renaissance period, it had moved all the way up to Vatican and popes. They knew it went on because they got tons of money from it. And this is how they built St. Peter's Basilica. Chills go down my spine when I tell you that. The single largest cash grab ever done, right at the Pope level. They used the money to buy palaces. They used the money to finance wars. They used the money to buy art. The entire rebuilding of St. Basilicas in Rome in 1515 was financed by an indulgence campaign across Germany. Now, why did they do Germany? The reason they did Germany is because it wasn't just about Pope Leo X. He had made a deal with Albert of Brandenburg. Albert of Brandenburg, just 27 at the time, had bribed his way into favors, right? And so what happened is the church basically sold him what's called a sacred position. It's kind of like buying sainthood now. They realize people pay for this shit. Jeez. La, 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 Pulitzer. And we're talking at staggering price tags. And so this archbishop, I gotta do a price. Hang on one second. I want to do a price comparison. I just want to get a correct mathematical figure because I want to give you scope and scale. $50 million in today's money. For a mere $50 million, we will sell you a sacred position. Right? Now, of course, this archbishop borrowed it from what's called the Fugger, F-U-G-G-R, you Fugger, the Fugger banking empire, which was known as Europe's most ruthless financiers. So we're going to lend you this $50 million bucks. So Pope Leo X can say you're sacred and you're actually divine. And so it became a pyramid scheme. The Pope's going to say you, Archbishop of Brandenburg, Albert of Brandenburg, are actually divine, which you're going to pay $50 million for. Then the Pope and the church and you as a divine person sanctioned by the church because you now have a sacred position, you're going to go all across your country and you're going to do the biggest roadshow of the biggest roadshow of the biggest roadshow. 50% goes to the Pope. 50% goes to you and the Fuggers, you split it. It was the pyramid scheme of the Holy See. True story. I'm just giving you history. Right? I'm giving you history. So let me tell you a little bit about one of the people that rose as the rock stars of this time. Now, this was a Dominican friar. His name was Jovan, Johannn Tetzel, Tetzel. He was charismatic. He was theatrical. He was shameless. And he became the best indulgence pardoner the church ever had. When he rolled into town, this was the guy you wanted to see. They rolled out the streets for this guy because it was said, not only is he a pardoner, because remember, other pardoners were just salesmen. He was a better pardoner. And why was he a better pardoner? Because he was a Dominican monk. So he was a pardoner that was close to God. Some people would question the others, but if this, I got the papal seal, but it's a papal seal and a monk. Get it? And so they'd come into the town, they plant this big massive arms with papal seal and cross in the square, and he would do sermons. Get ready. This is where an art was perfected. So not only did the first one say, do you hear your mom calling to you from purgatory? Do you hear your father? He's suffering. I can hear him and you can't. We got to stop his suffering. He's the one that invented howling and screaming and agony on stage. And would have his little parade of people, and they would all go to writhing around on stage. Screaming out in pain as if they were being broke and they were being burned and they were being kicked and everything else, right? And this is where the Fear Roadshow began. And the reason the Fear Roadshow began is because it raised so much money. And I'll give you an example. It's why Southern preachers, God, seriously, God is going to save your life. That's all. They teach that. You've heard that cadence before. They teach it because at one time that's what worked. By the way, Wampa Papanog, thank you very much, as I consider myself non-religious, but I do enjoy your insight. Insight as in starting a war, or INSIGHT? Watching on Cowboy Logic this morning. Thank you. Yeah, I heard that my episode on Cowboy Logic came up. You still see it today, like in Pentecostal preaching. You hear that cadence. Black church, just get done. God is going to save you. He's going to save you. That's taught. And it's taught because it works. It's taught because it has worked throughout time. So this guy became the master of psychological terror on stage. Became the master. Lily, who criticized you? We love you. Don't worry about it. This is not about anybody's faith or religion or whatever. Look, he became the master of psychological terror and put on a road show where he had people dressed like souls with burning flesh or whatever. And that's where his famous line comes to us in history. As soon as the coin in the coffer rings, the soul from purgatory springs. As soon as the coin in the coffer rings, the soul from purgatory springs. This guy became huge. Huge. One nobleman or knight came to see him one time and bought one of his indulgences. I'll show you that in a minute. So a nobleman came, or a knight came at one time and bought an indulgence. But this was an operation at a time when their peasants, when these guys were coming to town and they heard that this tour is coming through, they would literally sell a vast majority of their livestock. They would empty their savings, their purses, widows and stuff. Entire families would pull together to spring grandma from the flames. And while the church was pious and said confession and contrition are required, but the message became cash equals salvation. It actually literally became kind of its own spiritual stock market. One German prince basically tallied his relic collection, all the shit that he bought from these guys, and how much years he would get for each one, because he was so worried about in hell. And he basically tallied it up and mocked, well, I saved millions of years off my purgatory time. Where this was kind of outlawed, this Tetzel guy set up shop in Judeburg, just outside of what's called electoral Saxony, and where the local ruler banned this bullshit. So he just set up across the river, and so the residents of Wittenberg would just walk across the border. And then they would return back bragging to their families, look at my certificate I got. Now, those people, why this matters, because there was somebody on the ground who started paying attention to this, saying, look, my sins are absolved. And that priest that was on the ground, because they would come back to their priest in a town where this shit was outlawed because they knew it was crookery. They'd just walk across the river, come back with their certificates. Now, that priest was a fellow by the name of, you might have heard of him, his name was Martin Luther. That's right. He was an Augustinian monk. He was a university professor. And he was absolutely freaking horrified that this rolling papal con show was doing this, and it just became the way it was done. He had seen that they were using psychological warfare on citizens. He's seen both sides of it. People, when they realized they probably did something stupid and just threw away all their money and there was no recourse, or it finally dawned on them, or people that couldn't do it, basically said, I'm going to hell. And so on October 31st, 1517, he basically nailed what's called his 95 Thesis on the Wittenberg's Castle Church. And he started basically an academic challenge. And that academic challenge, calling out the system, basically saying, if you don't know how they do it to you, you don't know how to push back on it. He basically taught this. And he told people, you got to get educated on how this shit works. You got to get educated on what's going on. I don't know how anybody can have a thumb down to this, because I'm just giving you history. This is not a religious lesson. This is history. And he basically, in his thesis 27, said, purgatory is an abuse. He didn't say it wasn't there. He basically said they're just abusing it. And the church pushed back, and this Thesil guy published his own thesis, although it was written by a ghostwriter, right? The legal part of the papal system, they condemn Martin Luther, but it took off. It was devastating to them. They were translated into German, and it spread like wildfire across Europe. If this wouldn't have happened, you would have the hardcoreness, no invaders. If you trespass, you're dead. And by the way, you're not getting asylum, otherwise known as Vatican City. All of that would have been there, right? He's the one that kind of stopped that. And when people woke up, there was a pushback on it, and they started to seize back from the church all of the lands they had stolen. And this is what kind of the Protestant fight and stuff was all over, right? And then in the Council of Trent, they reformed the system and says, no more cash sell, trust was shattered, it's gone. Now this Tatzel guy died in disgrace in 1519. But it was all about the chest. Now I'm going to play something for you I think you'll kind of enjoy. Hang on one second. Let me get it ready here. When I do these, I'm only giving you history. I tell you right at the beginning of my broadcast, I beg for people to stay focused because we've lost focus in society, right? I beg people to stay focused. I mean, a lot of people can't stay focused. I also beg people that, again, you got to understand how the system does it to you in order to push back on it. And this is the only formula historically that has ever worked. You got to understand this. This is the only formula in history that has ever worked in pushing back the system. You must audit the system. You must look at everything from beginning to end with clarity. You got to listen to everything to understand it. And you got to use judgment and discernment because you cannot push back if you don't understand how the system does it to you. Now, with that, I want to show you one of the real short kind of historical tales that will kind of give you, I guess, a little bit of imagery to this. But I've gone much deeper into what I've told you in this because I gave you the whole story from beginning to end. Okay. Rob says, I don't see people in this chat losing it. Is he talking about, let me ask you a question. Will somebody go back in the time code and figure out where I said people were losing it? I'm not sure I said that people were losing it. I did say, let's focus. But that's not the same as not losing. It's a little bit different. It was somebody earlier posting a bunch of links. And then when it comes to theology, Rob, everybody wants to throw in a scripture, throw in a quote, throw in whatever. And when people divert and go to that quote and they'll go look it up, they're off the main lesson, which is a history lesson, not really a biblical lesson. That's what it's about in the program. I beg people to, right? Sure, man, that's what I meant. And that's why I didn't say I didn't say people chat and losing it, right? We're very focused on the word share. So that's what it is. I focus. See, the system, I'll give you an example right now. You're finding out that Candace Owens was totally full of shit, saying that guy was never there. She's got inside information. Tyler Robinson didn't do it, blah, blah, blah. What you see in court, now it's coming to court, and they actually have video footage of him doing it. She's not going to be able to backpedal from it. But people believe that shit and it was all designed to get you everywhere. Well, Erica's a robot. Somebody goes stab her. This. All of that is designed to capture people's attention with shit that will enthrall. And you're right. In this program, I don't do cliff notes. That's why my program's no longer. It's teaching, right? It's teaching. But here's what happened. I think when you look at history, you can understand what's been done, how they do it, and you can see they're doing it again. That's the whole deal. You can see they're doing it again. And I use the great teaching element of history to help people understand it. Anyway, let me share something with you that you might like. Just a little entertainment, but you can maybe put although they're not real, you can put a little faces to this.
In 1500, every Catholic in Europe believed the same thing. When you died, your soul went to Purgatory, a place of fire where you burned for your sins. How long depended on what you had done: murder, theft, adultery. The Church said it could reduce that sentence for a price. Johann Tetzel was their man. Papal authority, a printing press, a published tariff. Murder, 8 groats. Robbery, 7 groats. Heresy, 9 groats. You paid. You received a certificate. Your sins forgiven. In 1517, a Saxon knight named Hark walked up to Tetzel with a question. Could he buy an indulgence for a sin he had not yet committed? Tetzel thought about it. Then he named his price, 30 crowns. Hark paid. Tetzel sealed the certificate and handed it over. 2 days later, Tetzel's wagon moved through the woods. Hark was waiting. They fell upon him, beat him, took the chest, every coin, every certificate. As Tetzel screamed from the mud, Hark raised his visor. "That," he said, laughing, "is the sin I had in mind." Hark lived long. He kept that certificate until he died. Tetzel had sold something that was never his to sell. What waited in the dark had never heard of Johann Tetzel and did not care about the certificate.
They did a good job retelling that story. Groat, by the way, don't confuse it with a Middle Eastern goat. That's a virgin. This is a groat. In medieval times, a groat is a piece of silver, and in value, they range from $250 in today's time, $215 to about $1,600. So now you know some history that might help you kind of even understand what the hell even the Reformation was, but also might help you understand where did even this concept of purgatory and indulgences come from. And by the way, some history says that did happen. Some history says they're not sure. The video I just showed you, they tend to lean it probably did happen, right? But who knows? But it's good. It's just a good teaching tool anyway. And this is why I go back, never confuse God with what is man-made. Currently, in our nation and in the world, they'll sell be on the right side of history. It's the righteous thing to do. It's the honorable thing to do. Trans rights, you don't care. It's all bullshit. That's all man-made shit. This battle with Candace and shit, man-made shit. All these little battles they give us, Alex Jones, president's not fit. He's throwing the election on. It's bullshit. It's theater. It's crap. And people are addicted to crap. People are addicted to, well, they're really hiding the UFOs. But you know what? That's not what matters. You know what matters? America surviving. Your freedom. Your liberty. That's why I tell you, I don't give a shit if anybody goes to jail over the election stuff. Because even if you locked up Hillary for her server, it wouldn't change the system. I only care about one thing: get the right documents, contracts, etc. in place and forever secure our elections. And I don't give a shit if anybody goes to jail about it, because sending somebody to jail will not fucking change it. The only thing that will change it is fixing the contracts and the physical stuff of how they do it. But the system always wants to distract you from, it's the paper where the felonies are. Oh, no, it was the machines, which is a misdemeanor. You are watching this play out right now, misdirection. And isn't it interesting? See, I'll give you an example. We look at this one example right here with 165 on the bottom, 1,000 never went through the machines, which are totally made up and fabricated. That's one state felony, one federal felony with 20-year prison sentence each time. That's 240, what would that be? 240,000? Is that right? Whatever it is. But you understand what I'm 340,000? Individual felonies with 20 years behind each one of them. By the way, they all stack on each other. Life in prison, right here. But what do they sell you? Oh, it's the machines, it's the machines, it's the machines, which is a misdemeanor and non-enforceable and voluntary. That's the system. Isn't it interesting they hid that? Isn't it interesting they hid that behind a cross? Just like Swallows Well. They're all fucking perverts and shit. They get away with stuff. Is anything going to change with Swallows Well going to court or stepping down? No. But they make it look like the people made a difference. Nothing changed. All of this same buffoonery and connery goes on today, and it's the same bullshit tactics. So I don't care about convictions, because convictions won't change a thing. We got to change how we operate the entire system. We do that by contracts and understanding how it's done, plug in the holes, putting the teeth back where there was no teeth. That's what changes the system. But right now, the system is giving you all kinds of things to worry about. And if you're not worried about this crisis over here, and oh, that was an alien, and oh, there was this, and this was this, and oh, Erica's really bad, and Candace is the biggest newscaster in the world, and all this other shit. To keep you away from the simplest truth of all. We either survive or we fall. And the only thing that decides surviving or following is our elections. That's it. Nothing else matters. Nothing else matters. All of this little trivia bullshit doesn't matter, because it all goes back to elected officials who got elected in office, most of them by criminal means. But they'll let you fight the little fires because they know you will focus on the wrong things. And so all this distraction, I'm amazed that Candace, let's just look at the numbers. I'm amazed that she has millions of followers. She told you, I got inside information. I've studied this more than ever and whatever. And that kid wasn't even there. And I'm willing to testify for him and this. And it's a con. Now they did really good. They held back footage. They held it back. They knew what was coming. And you find out they got video footage of them the whole fucking time. Will you see her numbers go down? Because people are that weak. You can't even go back and unfollow these people that conned you. You just move on to the next thing. But I like her. She's cute. And that's mankind. So it comes down to, do you buy what they're selling? You're right. And it comes down to, where do you stand? What are your standards? If you're in it for fucking entertainment, let them be entertained. That's what it is. You're just in the fucking Coliseum being entertained, but you're not in the fight. You think you're in the fight. You play like you're in the fight. You swear you're in the fight. No, you're fucking sitting in the Coliseum being entertained. Does it matter if Macron's wife is a dude? If we had a picture today of Macron's wife with his wanker dropped, or Michelle Obama's with his snake dropped, what would change? Prices go down, oil go down, gas get cheaper, you get 3 times the grocery for your money? Fuck no. Nothing would change. But it's great fucking entertainment. Instead of looking at a ballot and understanding how it is, you're afraid to share this because you've been shamed into it. But you look, I'm looking at her skirt. I can see a bulge binking and bopping. And you'll put fucking hours of research into that. You'll go back and watch footage and swear somebody standing there with a phone is a fucking gun. But you won't really learn how our elections work because somebody convinced you it was a 6-degree polynomial and they got it all covered and they're fucking going to melt them to prison bars. Don't worry. We got this. There you go. And I just gave you from 200 BC forward, and it's still going on. And man can't get past this condition. Now, for ancient man, I can forgive it. Because ancient man couldn't see everything going on. Ancient man, if they were lucky to get an update, it might be 2 years later after the event. But you know what we live in? We live in the most nastiest time at all and the greatest time at the all simultaneously. And at a time when we can actually see this happen in real time and we can do our own research and everybody possesses powerful fucking computers to do it right there. More power in this, 2,000 times more power in this of what sent the man to the moon. Oh, wait a minute. What's the fraud? It's a fake. We really didn't go to the moon. I want to focus on that. It's flat. Why ain't the water spilling off the earth instead of understanding the power you have in your hand? And we live in the greatest time ever. Ever. But we have the old baggage of failing to act, being able to be sold, being able to be promoted, judging people on their looks. Like this person because they say Jesus a lot, hate this person because they're a Jew. I wore red tennis shoes. It's all a fucking con. Because the one thing we've proven throughout time, we're resilient, but we've proven we fucking like being servants and slaves. For me, I can't accept it. When I look at people following Candace and I see who really follows and do it, now what I think is, what a shame, a great mind lost following that shit. Because it's a measurement. It's a measurement of who you are willing to put your name on. It's not about following folks. Go to following somebody and look at the people that follow yours too. You see who follows each other? It's technically those people putting their name on that bullshit. And that's part of why they show it. Oh, they must be good. If Raphael follows them, oh, they must be really good. I got to do this. It's bullshit, 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 bullshit. And you got to decide if you want to come out of the bullshit at a time when you have enough tools, research, acumen, and stuff to do it. But you got to be willing to do it, and you got to dig, because history has taught us every single bit of this. And for me, it's just time to cut the fucking crap. Share this program.
Rennie Good was a gifted soul, a writer and a poet and a mother. Wow, she tried to hit an agent with her car. Oh no, pop motherfucker, now she's gone. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Being a fucking liberal is a mental disease. Blue hair and fuckables with the septum ring. You are not a hero, you're a fucking disease. You fuck around and find out it's what it is. Jeffrey Pretty was a Jewish homo. Started talking shit to protect a chomo. He was getting nicked when he pulled a gun. Bam, motherfucker, now you're gone. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Being a fucking liberal is a mental disease. Blue hair and fuckables with a septum ring. You are not a hero, you're a fucking disease. Fuck around and find out what that is.
In 1500, Every Catholic in Europe believed the same thing. When you died, your soul went to Purgatory, a place of fire where you burned for your sins. How long depended on what you had done: murder, theft, adultery. The Church said it could reduce that sentence for a price. Johann Tetzel was their man. Papal authority, a printing press, a published tariff. Murder, 8 groats. Robbery, 7 groats. Heresy, 9 groats. You paid. You received a certificate. Your sins forgiven. In 1517, a Saxon knight named Hark walked up to Tetzel with a question. Could he buy an indulgence for a sin he had not yet committed? Tetzel thought about it. Then he named his price, 30 crowns. Hark paid. Tetzel sealed the certificate and handed it over. 2 days later, Tetzel's wagon moved through the woods. Hark was waiting. They fell upon him, beat him, took the chest, every coin, every certificate. As Tetzel screamed from the mud, Hark raised his visor. "That," he said, laughing, "is the sin I had in mind." Hark lived long. He kept that certificate until he died. Tetzel had sold something that was never his to sell. What waited in the dark had never heard of Johann Tetzel and did not care about the certificate.
Not fixing 2020 will damn our nation forever. The historic Maricopa County full forensic audit effort processed 20,895,610 digital and forensic images of varying formats, resulted in 208 million individual evidence-proof files. The system processed over 58 billion forensic measurements, resulting in over 2 trillion individual base computations. No hopium, no hype, just hardcore forensic evidence. Please make sure the Maricopa County Full Forensic Audit Archives survive. Donate now. So if you want what happened in the 2020 election fixed, then please donate to protect and secure this historic evidence.
You'll fight for free and fair elections, invent and scan the ballots of kinematic artifact detection. You love to read and learn, travel and explore. You're a fearless, braveheart patriot who's opened doors. You are courage, you're our voice. Jovan, we thank you for what you're fighting for. You're our warrior. You are brave like a lion. You're David fighting Goliath, couldn't ask for more. You're our warrior. Think of what you've done for you, for me, for our country. You'll go down in history as our warrior. You lead by God and always do what's right. In the battle for our nation, you lead the fight. We pray for your safety, the armor of God to protect you from all of us. Here's a thank you for all that you do. You are courage, you're our voice. Jovan, we thank you for what you're fighting for. You're our warrior. You are brave like a lion. You're David fighting Goliath, couldn't ask for more. You're our warrior. as our warrior. Jovan, your hero, we stand behind. We're inspired by the fire inside your eyes. American proud, we know you'll fight till your dying day, and we'll always stand behind you through everything. You are courage, you're our voice. Jovan, we thank you for what you're fighting for. You're our warrior. You are brave like a lion. You're David fighting Goliath, couldn't ask for more. You're our warrior. Think of what you've done for you, for me, for our country. You'll go down in history as our warrior.